Edwards.
Join the meeting.
Hi, good afternoon
Hello.
or good morning still. This is Susan. Glad you're here.
Susan.
Hi.
Okay. So you're with the county, or you are?
This is Susan Tibbin, Loving
Oh,
Room
hi,
Legally,
Susan.
Susan and Paul. Hi. Nice to hear that you're part of the group.
Short notice, and I was doing a lot of research on this overlay this morning, so
yeah,
I hope I'm prepared.
Me too, but I think it'll be interesting to exchange and see what other people's questions are.
And what the working group is to accomplish.
Right. Yeah.
And that one call earlier.
You're gonna know. Yes, I did this morning's call, and a number of people, quite a large group, did this morning's call, and on building requirements, and touched on class course, as well as I'm just looking at touching base with my notes here, so I can let you know all this stuff.
Monique Ramirez has joined the meeting.
Ellen Drell
Has the meeting.
Hey, Sue, we can get together later via email.
Absolutely, we'll do that. Thanks, Ron. I'll just hold on now. Thank you.
Okay.
Participant has joined the meeting.
This is Worson.
This is Edwards. I'm here already.
Valerie.
The meeting.
Robot did announce Paul Henry.
The person that just joined?
Maria Edwards. Everyone, this is Carmel Angelo, and this is the overlay zones, exemption and/or exclusion zones group phone conference. It is 11:31, and we're supposed to start at 11:30. With 26 participants on this call, we only have 14 right now, so I believe that we will have some interruptions as people get on the call. We've had two specific working groups so far. This is our third this week. Track and trace yesterday, and then we had building requirements earlier today. We're still dealing with the technology, and I think we're doing better than we did last week. What we've learned is we can't really mute everybody, which we'd like to do, and have an orderly fashion for questions. We're able to do that because some of you are on phones and other participants are in front of a laptop or a computer, where you certainly could participate, but the people on the phones can't. So with that, no one is muted. And how we've been moving through the calls is that
Has joined the meeting.
Individually, but what we plan on doing
Gail Simpson.
Has the meeting.
on this call, just like we did with the last working group, is we have a series of questions that people have submitted, and so I will go down the list. If you've submitted questions, you will get called on, and that's how we'll try to have some orderly fashion, because there are 26 people on this call, and we have an hour and a half. So to get started,
Use the landline.
meeting.
We're now 17 people, so just a few more. That should be good. Regarding the ground rules and the
A
call,
participant has joined the meeting.
I'm going to go over the ground rules, except to say that it's important that we're courteous to each other and full as we proceed. Know that there will be interruptions, and we will have to interrupt you if you jump in to speak, because we know on this end that somebody is already answering that question. Additionally, we know that what we're doing is not perfect, but it's the best we can do today, and I think with each working group call,
Join the
we will
meeting.
be more organized at doing these calls. Additionally, we talked about doing in-person meetings rather than the calls, because there are so many people that are on the calls that it might be easier trying to do this in person. And surprisingly, I have heard complaints from this group that, that people do not want to do in-person meetings. So last week, this week, and next week, we will continue with phone call working groups and decide in October if we're going to do in-person meetings. If we do, you will still have the ability to call in. So what we've done the last two calls this week, track and trace, was an hour and a half. It took about an hour to really get down to some issues that we could really work on and move forward to the board. So I think track and trace was actually a really good work group, and I want to thank everybody that participated. Regarding the building requirements, not as easy as track and trace because there are so many complexities around building requirements and so many unanswered questions. The building requirement working group is there are more questions than answers, and we will all work through these together. What we did with that is that we went to the questions that were asked, and we just went through and asked people to speak. And so what we plan on doing today now with overlay zones is the same thing. However, before we start on overlay zones, I would like Cass to go ahead and do the roll call. Amendment. Aaron Niederoth.
Here.
Bob Taylor.
Here.
Simone Gay. Drell.
Yeah, I'm here.
Ed Taylor.
Here.
Ed Johnson. Frida Dodd. Johnson.
Here.
Jen Coleman. Here. Kyle.
I'm sure, but I only works with the telephone. I've been trying to do it on the computer, and it's not working.
Okay, thank you. Jen Prakasi.
Here.
Jude Coleman.
I'm here.
Julia. Karen Meyer. Marie. Nadine Boyer. Lower. Pat Sellers.
Patrick, other requirements?
Great.
Patrick, other obligations today?
Thank you. Paul Harry. Penelope Andrews. Ron Ward.
Present.
Sue Galati.
Present. Present.
Bree Edwards.
I'm
Wilson. From our county staff, we have Carmel Angelo. Here. Mel Rao. Here. Nagzalis.
Here.
Raylan Hunt. Here. Andy.
Sandwater here.
Okay, so before we get started, I'd like Nash to make a few comments about what we're doing with overlay zone consultants.
This is Nash Gonzalez. We expect to have our consultant on board pretty soon. Would anticipate having our consultant participate on these calls. And the consultant will also be provided with a lot of the questions that come out of these calls as well. Just quickly, what would happen at the beginning would be our consultants would be participating and putting together a community outreach program that's going to be focused on stakeholder interviews, community workshops, study sessions. We'll then be working with the consultant
Has joined the meeting.
Outreach programs to be able to go out to the various areas of the county. And then the consultant will be advising us on both the appropriate land use and what level of CEQA analysis will be necessary. So I just want to quickly go over, there is an outreach because, again, we want to hear from the public on this concept. We don't know what the tool is going to be, if it's going to be a zoning concept, land use concept, but that would be presented. We would hold public hearings on this. We would identify if there's any issues going forward with the general plan. An environmental document will be prepared for the overlay or overlays, and then we would be presenting the concepts to the Planning Commission and then ultimately to the board. So again, this is a process that we have to go through. If it is a land use process, but again, one of the key things to consider is that a lot of the questions will be out here today, but a lot of these things our consultant needs to be involved with because they will be going out to the public. They will be conducting an outreach program that will take in all this information to be able to determine what is appropriate.
Thank you very much, Nash. So we'd like to go ahead and start. And based on what Nash said, we'll just remind everyone that our hope is
Has left the meeting.
that once we have our consultants on board, that our consultant will participate in the working group calls because everything you have to say is really input for the consultant. So we'll go ahead and get started, and we'll do this working group just as we did the last one. We have a list of questions from our participants, and we will start by calling on each participant, and we ask that you just focus on
Has joined the meeting.
and ask that question, focus on just one or two issues from each person. So our first participant is Monique Ramirez.
Thank you. I sent about 11.
Go ahead.
I guess really want to know when the outreach starts happening, if the consultants are planning to go to each individual community that is requesting an overlay. That is something that would be nice to know. If we don't know the answer, if we can request that, they could eventually hold meetings in each local community. I don't know if I should go through all of my questions. I don't think we have time for that.
No, I don't think you have to. Well, I'll defer to any response to Monique.
Well, when the consultant is on board, we will then put together a schedule for the public outreach meetings. We are looking at some of the communities that have been at least vetted out at the board discussion, and then there will be meetings that will be held here in Ukiah as well to be able to capture as many of the areas as possible. But we're looking at various areas around the county, Laytonville, the coast, Covelo, and so on. So again, we're talking to the consultant about that.
And also, do you guys know when the overlay, when this process is actually going to start with the consultant? I mean, are you guys even publicly announcing yet who the vendor has been selected?
The vendor, we can't do that at this point because we're still in I'll say, contractual negotiations.
Couple weeks.
So probably looking at a couple weeks for an announcement.
Okay, and for the process to even begin with that consulting firm.
Right.
Okay. I think all the other questions that I've presented are really specific probably to the consulting firm. I'm not, because my questions are like, what parameters of the overlay process? What could and could not be an option? Does this only apply to, the residential sunset zones? Could it apply to other situations? Those are the questions that I have, which I don't know this working group can answer today.
Right, Ed, chime in again. One of the tasks that the consultant is going to have to look at is, besides doing the outreach, is they're going to have to take a look at all adopted ordinances and plans to determine how we best move forward with this. That's why earlier I mentioned the general plan. They have to take a look at that. They have to look at all the adopted documents. They need to take a look at the environmental impact report that was done for the general plan to be able to see what they can do within the existing parameters. So again, what we want to try to do with this is not reinvent the wheel, but at least maybe add something to the car, and not necessarily change the complete design or overhaul it, but at least try to find something that fits within the existing parameters. So that's part of what the consultants do right off the bat. And then as far as scaling the public outreach meetings.
Okay. I just want to, this is Mary Lynn from Planning. I just want to add something. You did have open questions. They were all very good questions. And just looking at everyone's questions that they submitted, these are all very good questions, and these are things that we will give to the consultant for them to take into consideration. So I'm sure we're going to have more questions at the end of the day, and those will be added to the list.
And this is Nash again. One of the other things that I want to point out is that all these things are very good. We'll provide these to the consultant. The other thing is that this actually allows for the consultant to be much better prepared when they ground at the
Having some trouble. I think there's more than one person speaking. So
sounds like maybe people are having some side stations or background conversations in the area they're in. That's happening. Please mute yourself on your
Has
end
left
of
the
phone.
meeting.
Thank you.
okay, now anything else?
No, that's it.
Okay, so Mary.
This is Jude. I have a question.
Monique, thank you very much for your questions. The next person is Gail Johnson.
Yeah, my question. Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, thank you.
My questions are general, and I think you're talking about them about the process. I want to make sure neighborhoods who want to be excluded also are in this process. I'm in the Deerwood neighborhood, so we're looking at an exclusion zone, and I'm wondering when we might expect an overlay to take effect.
Nash, and again, I'm just going to give you what I would consider the best case scenario. Again, I'm going to look at this as the zoning overlay as an example, and look at it as if it were through the general plan process as well. So you're probably looking at the consultant doing the initial work, public outreach meetings, which again, that's what takes up a lot of the time, and then going back to the drawing board, determining what is the best approach, and then coming forth to the Board of Supervisors and the Planning Commission with a concept, and then receive direction to move forward. I would say that at best case scenario, we're probably looking at 6 months, and at the earliest, because this is going to take some time to flush out. There's also an environmental document that needs to be prepared. And so the question that the consultant is going to have is this within the parameters of the existing environmental document that was adopted for the general plan? If not, what do they need to do? So there's a lot of unanswered questions that don't allow me to give you a specific other than we'll be looking at about 6 months right now.
I have a question. This is Jude. Can you hear? Yeah. Nash, you probably didn't get a copy of the document that I forwarded to a couple people including you, Mary Lynn, that explains how the Planning Commission in San Luis Obispo is dealing with the Coastal Commission and the finding that they came to that there was no need to do CEQA, and the environmental determination that relative to the section 26055H of the California Business and Professions Code amendments for the coastal zone made by the Planning Commission will make CEQA make an exemption from CEQA. This is what one county has done, and we can do more research with other counties. But Nash, first of all, if it's going to be essential to assume, I have three questions. First, is it that it's essential to assume that there's going to need to be environmental review for coast? Number two, 6 months puts most of us out of business. So that leads to question number 3, which is what kind of temporary licenses is county prepared to issue to get us to the table to apply for our state licenses and continue our businesses on the coast. And actually, another comment is simply that we're turning everything over to the consultants, which is what this sounds like. I'd like to know, what we had in the last meeting that I was in this morning, that we're preparing a list to present to the Board of Supervisors, a list of suggestions and issues and questions. So is that all gone by the wayside and everything's now going through the consent? And the parenthetical comment to you, Carmel, I don't know who's protesting against face-to-face meetings, but I really want to urge to have them. I think that the level of detail, as you mentioned earlier today, the level of detail we're now going to be going forward into henceforth really requires in-face meetings. So I just wanted to register that. So that's a lot.
Okay. Jude, first off, thank you very much. I see that our technology is working. You actually raised your hand and got called on, so thank you for that. Bringing in person-to-person meetings when we have the consultant on board, I believe that is exactly what we'll do. And also regarding the question about the feedback and where it goes, the feedback will go to the consultant and to the board. The board will be involved in this process. We're not over to a consultant. However, we do have a consultant that we will bring on as a subject matter expert to work on an overlay zone. So it will all come together. Now, with that said, go on the list. We're going to Gail Johnson. Gail.
Wait a second. Most important issue, this is Jude again, was the timing. We have to be ready to apply for, as you know, licenses from the state on January 2nd. So how can we wait for any kind of determination about the coastal cannabis businesses? We take 6 months. We'll lose partners, we'll lose investors. We won't be able to operate, so we can't pay our rent. We'll have to shut down. So this is kind of a serious issue.
This is Nash. This is not, it doesn't sound like it's overlay. You need to mute here. This is not about the overlay. It sounds like what you're talking about is the coastal zone, and what we'll do is we will reach out to the Coastal Commission, but again, until rules come out from the Coastal Commission, that's something that we'll deal with at that time. This is really regarding the overlays, and this applies to the inland area of the county.
Okay, so with that, now going to go to Gail Johnson. Gail, we time for to answer your question.
Yeah, fine.
All right, so you have nothing else, Gail?
No.
Okay, Evan Johnson.
Thanks.
Great. Ron Edwards, are you still on, Ron?
I'm still here. I've got a couple of things. The first off, in doing some research on this, I did not find a document about the California overlay process. I found a number of updates.
Ron, thank you. There is none. Again, this is a concept that was thrown out during various discussions, and we're just keeping the word overlay in here for discussion purposes. But part of the reason of asking a consultant to come on board is to tell us what is the best tool to use to address this. When I look at overlays from a use perspective of when you take a base zone and we'll say like an RR5 and then you add an overlay to it that has maybe a flood zone or it has some sort of other protection zone on it. But that one overlay is traditionally used. In this case, I think the word overlay just kind of got tossed out there, kicked around, and somebody thought it was probably the best word to use. But that's one of the reasons why we asked a consultant to come on board and to look at the various questions and to look at what the county is trying to achieve and then come up with what is the right approach. An overlay, or is it something else? But, Ron, you were absolutely right. There isn't anything out there.
You found a lot of things on the process, and it seems that this will apply to us and can help us avoid some pitfalls. And I think one overlaying thing, the word, we need to start with when the consultant is there is the definition of what we are talking about. I think a lot of this is the legal cannabis industry is being confused with the black market cannabis, and I think that that's causing a lot of problems. So I want to have a clear definition of what we're talking about in the legal cannabis business, of a tax reporting agency, live scan of employees, live scans of principals, because I think that would alleviate a lot of the concerns that some of the neighborhoods have in this. So I think that that's going to be my major thing, and if I have any other questions, maybe I can come back later.
All right, great. Thank you, Ron. Let's move to Penelope Andrews. Penelope, are you on the call? It doesn't appear that she is. How about Aaron Nero?
Carl, can you hear me?
Yes, you.
Okay. I'll make it quick. I think Monique had stated very appropriate earlier. All of my questions, I'm sure, will be covered by the consultant selected. So I will pass on my questions, other than say, I guess, one statement that in regards to the Woody Glen Lane Boonville Road neighborhood group, which I'm representing, one of the people representing that today, we are prepared to act as a case study for the consultant if selected as part of the opt-out portion of the overlay process. And that's what I had to say.
Okay. Thank you, Aaron. Thank you. Okay.
I think I just fixed it.
Is it okay?
Yeah. I just want to say I am on the call. Yeah, I have questions, but it sounds like your consultants are going to be the time to talk about that, so I don't think I need to go over the questions, but I just wanted to be part of the process to represent some of the northern Mendocino places that haven't really been mentioned very often, like South Leggett and Leggett. So I'll just let the next person go. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you very much, Penelope. Okay. The next person on the list is Sue Anzalotti.
Right.
Hi, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
And I just would like to also say that I'm part of the Woody Glen neighborhood. Everything that Aaron said, I just hope that we can move forward and make all of this work for everybody involved. And I don't have any questions at this time.
Well, thank you very much for that. The next person is, actually, we are at, let's see, Paul Hansberry.
This is Paul Hansberry. Can you hear me?
Yes.
I was wondering about batteries. Obviously, it looks like the consultant hasn't been identified yet, even though we've been talking about this for months and months. And including overlay, there are issues with exceptions and common sense exceptions. I've got the boundaries of the overlay zones, determining what the bed would be. For instance, in Laytonville, would it be restricted to north road area, or would it be the town proper? There be inclusion by zip code if you're outside of the town, outside of the boundary of the overlay zone. Is the overlay zones, or what sort of licenses would they include? If you want to do manufacturing or have a micro business within that overlay zone, perhaps instead of talking about overlay zones, just creating an exception to the zone process for these areas. Instead of trying to shoehorn the word overlay into what we're going to do, it's a unique industry. It's a unique situation, and we shouldn't get caught into the overlay zone and just trying to suit the definition of a placeholder of a word as overlay. I'm wondering why it's been taking so long to identify a consultant. If that's the route that we have to go, 6 months, I couldn't agree more, is essential to everyone who needs to be included in this. So all the questions seem to be relating to the consultant, but perhaps boundaries and the inclusion by zip code, the ability and what the opt-out process would be, is also something that we're not going to even be able to discuss for another 6 months, the best case scenario from what I'm hearing.
So this is Carmel. Let me jump in and clarify. I think there's been a miscommunication. We didn't say we don't have a consultant. We said that we're in negotiations with the consultant, and we can't say who the consultant is. That's what we said. So I think that we're working pretty good on this, and within the next 2 weeks, what we also said is within the next 2 weeks that we'd be able to bring a contract to the board and announce who the consultant is. We are waiting 6 months for anything. So I think what's really good to see is that the stakeholders are ready to go with the overlay and the consultant as well, based on all of your questions. So that's much appreciated. The next person is Jen Prakashi.
Hello. Yes, I feel like most of my questions will be better answered by the consultant, so I'm willing to just wait until we have access to them. Thank you.
Okay, Amanda Ryman. I know Amanda's on.
She's in.
Okay. Patrick Sellers.
Yes.
How about Robert and Emmy Taylor?
Yes, I think I'd say that we're just happy to hear that the process is up and rolling. Obviously, we're seeing some of the same limitations that other people have mentioned using this format, but that there will be the input into the consultant once identified that will be beyond just this format. I'm hoping that we'll all be able to submit organized papers and the like to this person. And other than that, it all works well, and glad to be joining you in this, all of you.
This is Nash. There is going to be an extensive public outreach process that will actually allow the public to interact with the consultant. The consultant will establish this process so that there is input. And again, going back just real quick to Paul's question about the boundaries, all of this will be vetted out during the public outreach process, and how boundaries are determined, how areas are included or excluded, that will all be based on public input and information that is presented to the consultant and what is brought back from the consultant to the board. So I just wanted to clarify that.
Oh, okay. I think Amanda just joined us. Amanda Ryman. Amanda
Ryman.
Who joined us?
Has joined the meeting.
Okay. Amanda?
The volume is very low.
So, Amanda, we're having difficulty hearing you. Maybe you want to try
Has
calling
left
again.
the meeting.
All right, so while we wait for Amanda to get back with us, again, I think that Nash and Mary Lynn have covered it, that you have all submitted some really good questions. Appreciate that. All of these questions will go to the consultants. I believe it was either Jude or Corinne who mentioned in-person meetings, and we believe that those will start when we have the consultants on board. Reading the time frame, we should have a contract to the board in a 2 to 3 weeks for the board to authorize the starting with the consultants. We have 2 meetings scheduled for overlay. They're coming up. We have a meeting scheduled for September 20th and a meeting scheduled for September 26th.
Join the meeting.
Questioning the wisdom of doing those meetings without having our consultants on board. So I would ask the group, if you're all okay with it, that we wait till October and then we start the meetings when our consultant is with us. Any comments on that?
Yes, this is Hannah Nelson. Okay, things. Number one is I wasn't given an opportunity to ask any questions. Receiving a request for written questions 2.5 hours the day before just really doesn't work for my planning. And so I would ask in the future if we have the need to submit something in writing, if we could be given more time. I totally appreciate that you guys are doing the best you can. But also, I think it would be helpful if the comments are distributed to each other in the working group so that we are not being repetitive, that we could lend support for other people's questions or comments, but not necessarily be duplicative. And then with respect to working with the consultant in the working group, I would support recommendation to postpone until the consultant is on board, and also would encourage the kind of format that would allow more than just a submission of questions with a response, but also a troubleshooting working group kind of format once we get to the in-person. Thank you.
Casey O'Neill.
Casey, hold on. Casey, hold on, please. I want to respond to Hannah's question. I appreciate your question, Hannah, and when we actually get into a routine of the working groups for overlay, you'll be able to submit your questions or comments for that upcoming working group in writing. One of the biggest problems we have is there are 26 people in this working group. So what you might want to consider, 26 of you, is huddling and deciding if you can bring that number down, at least cut it in half, and then maybe 12 of you to be the voice for 26, and it might be easier for the consultants and easier for any of the working groups. So with that, I know, Casey, you want to speak, but Amanda has patiently been waiting, and so I want to go to Amanda, and after Amanda, Casey, you could speak. Amanda, are you there? Amanda, we can't hear you at all. So, Amanda, do you want to write out your questions or your comments? And we can read them to the participants? Would that work? Because right now you are unmuted. We do not have you muted. We just cannot hear you. So as we wait for Amanda, we'll go to Casey. Casey?
So, yeah, I also didn't get a chance to chime in my questions. Essentially, the only thing I have to throw in there is that Laytonville, we've had a couple of public meetings. We've had a subcommittee of the Laytonville MAC work on the zoning overlay. So there is a brief prospectus that has been drawn up of some comments and thought from the community that is going to be presented to a public meeting this evening. And so based responses from that public meeting, I will send those documents in so that those will be part of this process, and that's all I had.
Casey, that is wonderful. We really appreciate that. Thank you.
Okay.
6th.
Where's that meeting?
This evening at 5:30, I believe, at Harwood Hall.
Okay, we're going to try one more time with Amanda. Amanda, do you want to try? We still can't hear you. Are you there? Okay, looks like you may have written something.
Can you now?
Yeah.
Oh, oh my God! I'm in Los Angeles. I thought for sure I'd have better connection than Redwood Valley, but who knew? So I just my questions are primarily, I thought that we would be kind of as a working group coming up with like recommendations and a process. I didn't know we were going to be punting to the consultant, so most of my questions don't make that much sense. I do want to make sure that we are also including use of prior buildings, and when we talk about overlays. And finally, I just wanted to reiterate, and I typed this out, the time for the state is January 1st, but applications are going to come out in December. The state is really going to be looking to localities to inform them of who is getting a green light from the locality to move forward with a state application. So I want to just say, we are going to be having this process with this consultant. That's going to take a lot of time. There are businesses right now that need overlays in order to apply for a state license. So I think while we're coming up with the grand master plan for overlays, or whatever we're going to call them, we also need to come up with a plan for how the county can communicate to the state those businesses that are in the process of review so that they can go ahead and obtain their licenses from the state so that they don't fall behind everybody else and therefore aren't able to operate for about 6 months or so, even as we go through this process. So just wanted to reiterate the timeline, and that's it. I'm glad you could hear me.
Amanda, thank you. A couple comments. This is only working group that we are punting, and that's because we have a consultant that's been hired by the board to put together the overlay zone ordinance, and it doesn't make sense to rehash everything. And everything that was given to us today, all of these questions and your comments, they will be the consultants. What we want to do is have the consultant part of this working group, and that will happen in a few weeks. Regarding the state and what you're saying, I think you bring up some very good points, and my hope was that we would be dealing with those particular issues during the state requirements working group, which will happen at 2:30 today. So with that,
Carmel, this is Ellen Drell. I have a question and a comment as well when the time is appropriate.
Okay, go ahead, Ellen, and then I think it's Casey after that. Go ahead.
Okay. A question that comes to mind, and I think it is one that maybe we should be thinking about, and one that the consultant should be thinking about, is when they're doing their community outreach and their surveys, I'm wondering if there is, in fact, a place for anonymous comment. I'm not in favor of having anonymous comments or anonymous surveys being turned into the consultant. I think this should be an open community process, and that's the only way it'll really work. Even though clearly there's going to be some conflict and difference of opinion, I would really discourage the consultant from submitting or passing out comment forms that can be turned in, or opinion forms that can be turned in anonymously. So that's one thing. I think we need to, and it kind of in the same line, we need to think about how we deal with consensus versus looking for unanimous consent, and that's part of eliminating any opportunity for anonymous comment and really encouraging community discussion during when the consultants and local groups begin their outreach process. And then two other things. I am fully in favor of face-to-face meetings. I think that's really important. And I would suggest that we go ahead and have one of those later September meetings, either the 20th or the 26th, because a lot of us will have had an opportunity to submit some more questions, and again, we can maybe be better prepared to begin working with a consultant if we have an opportunity to meet again before the consultant's on board.
you for your comments. I think that what we can do is probably schedule a meeting for the maybe first week in October. Then that would get us better prepared for the consultants. When we look at the board calendar, we might have a class to the board for the consultant maybe on October 3rd. Maybe the 3rd. So if we look at meeting, Ellen, if we look at not meeting next week or the week after, but meet on October 3rd, that should give us plenty of time to prepare for the consultant.
One more, Hannah, I have one more process question.
I think, Casey, did you have any questions? I thought I heard you.
Yes, I just had one quick thing to add. My suggestion would be that for people who are applying for licensure from a zone that will be an overlay zone, the county should either consider them in good standing and respond as such to the state, or stay silent so the state could then authorize those people. If at such time the permit was revoked or denied, then that would obviously have the same consequences at the state level, but that making sure that the county doesn't, recognizing places where a zoning overlay is likely to happen, that the county provides support to those people by allowing them to continue into the state licensure process would be, I think, extremely crucial.
Casey, this is something that will have to be vetted by the consultant, and I don't have an answer for you, but that's a good question for the consultant.
And this is, and I'd also add, as part of the state requirements meeting and as a staff internally, we are working on planning our approach to working with the state, and so please join for the state requirement meeting. But this stuff overlaps, but we appreciate the comment, and we definitely hear where you're coming from, and we're going to do our best to try to put together a plan to work with the state. That makes sense.
Okay, so with that, then if we're in agreement, then if we have consensus on this, we will not have a September 20th overlay meeting. We will not have a September 26th overlay meeting, but we will have an overlay meeting the first week in October, and Cass will send out information on that. Questions that you have all submitted, not only will they go to the consultant, but they will also go to the board. I will be doing an update to the board on Tuesday the 19th. Your questions will go to the board so they have a better understanding of what the issues are. I think with that, unless there is anything else that is pressing right now, I think we could end the working group call. And next working group call is at 2:30 this afternoon, 2:30 to 3:30, and that is on state requirements. Anything else?
Question, this is Paul Hansberry.
Paul?
Will consultant be a participant in the working group in these calls and hopefully face-to-face meetings as well?
Yes, Paul, I think I said that already, but yes, I'm glad that you've asked it again so we can clarify. Absolutely, that's why we're waiting on the call. One call before the consultant comes on, the rest of the calls will be with the consultant, or me, face-to-face, either one.
I'm in favor of face-to-face meetings.
Great, I'm really glad to hear this, because like I said, it's interesting when everybody's trying to get this stuff together and really work criticism. So thank you for your support. Anybody else?
Yes, Aaron Niederross, one quick question.
Aaron.
Nash had mentioned that the consultant will be selected pretty soon, but is there a target selection date and start date?
As soon as possible. Again, we're in contract negotiations, and then we're moving very quickly.
Once the board has approved the contract, then that's our signal to move forward. So like Carmel said, we're trying to get the contract to the October 3rd meeting. Once the board approves it, we can move forward.
Likely mid-October is kind of what I'm here, at least on my side. Okay, thank you.
This is Monique Ramirez.
Go ahead, Monique. You will be our last question. Go ahead.
Just wanted to speak on when we do hold the meetings in person, it would be wonderful if they could be a little bit late in the afternoon so people that are in the really rural parts can have a chance to get there. It's so challenging to come at 9 a.m. in Ukiah. I'm literally almost teetering on a 3-hour drive, so it's really, really challenging. 11 or something like that, it would just be a lot easier. So that's the only input I have about it being a challenge for getting there in person.
One more thing. One more thing, Ron.
If you could, Carmel, before the maybe around the 20th or the 26th, compile the questions and comments that you've gotten from this working group and make available to all of us ahead of time.
Hey, Ron, that will be available on Tuesday the 19th because questions that we've received from everyone, they will be going to the board as part of my update. So when you see the agenda come out, either today or tomorrow, you will have a list of those questions along with questions from building requirements and the questions from the state meeting. We do not have a compiled list of questions from track and trace yet. So there you go. You all have the same information. So with that, was there, okay, if Casey, if that's you, you're going to be at, go ahead.
One thing, Hannah asked me, I think maybe she's on mute, she asked me just to confirm that the farther out we can get the scheduling on this thing, the better, especially in terms of the materials. I didn't know this was happening today until yesterday, and so juggling the schedule has been real difficult. So the farther out we can get the information about when they're happening and what the materials are, the more effective it's going to be for all of us, I think.
Good, see, that's a good comment. Thank you. The reason we've rushed these is because that was the direction of the board to get them going. But I agree, had we had weeks, we would have had more time to put it in your schedule, and we would have been better prepared. So with that,
Carson, I have to make a comment there because there has been several comments saying that there wasn't enough time to submit questions, and you're going to be assembling something to be delivered to the board. Accept questions from those that did not have time to respond and add those to your list.
If you get something to us by 1 o'clock, we will submit it. But that's 1 o'clock today. We're against our timeline to get everything to the clerk of the board. So if anybody does have anything, just submit it to Cass in my office by 1 o'clock today, and it will be included. So with
in favor of in case meeting.
I've been, I realize there may be some disappointment because we don't have a consultant on board yet, but this has been really good. We have a lot of good questions from you, and we will be better prepared when we start with our consultant. And for those of you that are on state requirements, we will be talking with you at 2:30. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks. Bye.
Thank you.